My first question, like, can you tell us about your childhood in Kolkata and when did you first realize that filmmaking could be more than just a passion and that it could become a career?
My childhood in Kolkata. So I was born and raised largely in Kolkata only. Um, there were few years in between where my dad was traveling for work, and we had to also kind of travel, because of him. So I spent, I think, it was very like 6 months in Bombay, 6 months in Singapore, 6 months in Nepal, and so it was all over the place. But largely in Kolkata. Grew up mostly in a joint family, um, with my grandparents and uncle, aunt. We all lived in the same house, all my life to my college at least. Um, and very middle class family where everyone had like secure jobs and everything. Nobody was in arts or films at all, but everyone was artistically inclined. So I think that was always every. I think in Kolkata, or in like Bengali families, you're kind of always you were kind of encouraged to have hobbies or like art form as your hobbies or something. So that was taken seriously as a kid for me. Uh, my father played the sitar as a hobby. He was always sketching and painting. My mom was also a poet, but never really a professional poet. She was always writing. So I think that was always there. My grandfather was also a poet, and I've seen him kind of write, uh, very like Radha Krishna poetry on them. So I grew up in this kind of this setup where everyone was artistically inclined. Nobody could, nobody had the privilege of doing this professionally. So I think that was my basic thing. And when I was always interested in the arts. I think I was, as a child, I was very much into dancing. I was a dancer, and I was dancing. I got into theater uh, with that at the same age. I was dancing and acting and that kind of thing on stage. And so it was a natural shift to film eventually. I watched the French film Amélie at a very, very young age. And I was mesmerized, because I couldn't articulate what I was liking, what I wanted to do related to that. But I knew this, film as an art form is something that I'm interested in. So I started clicking pictures because that was the easiest thing you could do at that time. Yeah, and I was just interested in that. And I think it was probably 2008 when like Amelie was one end of the spectrum, and 2008 I went to watch The Dark Knight right before my half yearly exam. And there was this very specific moment in The Dark Knight where Joker escapes and he sticks his head out of the police van. And I went to watch it right before my half yearly exam. But what was interesting was the audience was packed and it was filled with a lot of young people. I was in class 8 then, but it was filled with young people and also older people, because I went with my uncle. I saw like other kids also went probably with their parents and everything. And there was a visible like gasp, of like everyone was like shocked and taken aback. And it was a Batman film there where everyone had this very collective reaction. Um, and I think at that moment I knew that I wanted to be in films. This is something I want to do because this collective gasp, like I got out of the film and I was like looking at the audience because like, oh, everyone felt the same thing. Everyone felt, so that was something that I wanted to replicate in life. So I think yeah, and I think since then I've been always wanted to be like a writer director, and that was my path from there on. So anything I did, even if I did something differently, it was towards that goal.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. So,
Yeah.
what made you choose MFA in writing for the screen and stage at Northwestern University? And how did that experience change the way you approach storytelling?
Um, yeah, so I think shortly after school, uh, even I started making short films with my friends very early on in school, only class 9, 10, 11, 12. I was constantly making short films with my friends, my school friends, and the same school friends I work with even today. Um, so um, I was making short films with them, and I think in undergrad I wanted to go to film school, and I think because nobody in my family had done this before, they were a little scared. Like, they were like, at least in the undergrad, do something which is like a little vast. And maybe if you want to, if you still like it, and then do take it up like films in masters. And so my undergrad was in mass communication, which was very important because mass communication, and it was mass communication and journalism in Calcutta University in Calcutta, and I was constantly writing. I was writing for a paper. I was writing for Telegraph, um, and I was working with them. So I got into the habit of writing. I always knew I wanted to be a director, but my sense of direction always, it was only in undergrad that I realized my sense of direction came from storytelling and writing in general. It wasn't a visual was coming into my head first, and then I approached the film. It was always a story which was coming in my head, and then I approached the visual, and then it became a film. So I understood it. In hindsight, it was a good thing that I took mass communication in my undergrad because it also gave me confidence to then choose screenwriting as my very niche and in masters. And everyone was, I think, at that time against it because uh, it's screenwriters are not easily employable. Nobody gets jobs. I think everyone told me like learn cinematography so that even if you don't become a director, you can get hired as a cinematographer. And I used to love shooting. I used to shoot myself. I shot the feature that I directed right now. So I loved shooting. So it was natural for people to say that like take up cinematography. But I think I was very interested in writing. Not something that I had done so much in the past before, but thankfully my parents were very supportive. For some reason, they thought that, a writer, something is there in him. Like even if he can't become a screenwriter, something will happen. We'll figure it out. I think that trust they had, and I applied. Growing up, major major amount of films that I liked and related to were American films. Mm, Not necessarily mainstream films also. Sometimes very niche American films also I like, but I liked American films. And so for me, when I had to choose a film school, it was always an American film school and not so much the European film school. Because I would, even in undergrad, when I was in second year, I was constantly studying what the film students were making, what curriculum was taught, and I always found American film school was more structured, and sometimes I think you could say that is rigid, which is a fair criticism. But it had a structure, and I like structure in my work in general. I think uh, so. I only applied to, I think, American film school. I applied to 5 film schools because admission, like cost of, like submission application fees are very high. So I selected very few. I applied to those. I Northwestern was my top priority because Northwestern has 2 master's degree. One is documentary and the other is screenwriting. So it is known for the writing, and it it gave a lot of great writers in the American film industry. So I was aware of that. I was following work of American television, a lot of American television, which started with Northwestern writers, a lot of American indie films, which started with Northwestern writers. So I applied to Northwestern with that, and I luckily got selected there, and I was lucky enough to also get a scholarship because I don't think without the scholarship I could attend. Um, so it was a 2 year program in Chicago, and I was there for 2 years, and it was a lot of fun because it was 12 people from very different walks of life. I was very young at that time. I was 23 and the youngest in the master's program. So I was the, I think, only one who came with no experience. And I think that came with its own, my own insecurity also, because, in American MFA programs in general are less theory and more workshop. So you're constantly writing and kind of like workshopping and like kind of getting your work read out loud, and people giving you comments and feedbacks of how you can kind of like change and do this and what can happen. And I think it was only then I realized how inexperienced I was, and everyone in the class were miles better than me. And I think that was kind of like I think the first 2 3 months was daunting. It was very scary because you kind of feel like, am I the token selection? They thought like, I needed to be selected. Am I just a token selection? Do I deserve to be here? Um, but then you slowly, that company of the 11 others kind of like, they rub off on you, and you start watching stuff that you like, you relate to, and it shows up in your work, and then you realize that you're growing. So those 2 years was great because I think for those 2 years I was constantly writing, and it was told to us in those 2 years that as writers you can't afford to have anything as writer's block, because you're literally paid to write in certain deadlines. And Northwestern had a quarter system, so unlike the semester system, which is 6 months, it was 4 months. So you're writing two scripts in 4 months. And at that time, it was easy because you're writing first drafts. It doesn't matter how bad it is, but you're at least getting it out there. So I got into the habit of writing every day while I was there. I also got into the habit of writing without thinking if it is good or bad. So just kind of relying on my instinct and writing, because there is always that you can make the script better in the second draft, but at least write the first draft. Don't wait for the first draft. And I think that is a life skill that I kind of got. And yeah, I think I. But I'll give you an example. Like I think because of that, when I was writing my thesis in my second year, and I was extremely poor at backups and storing data, that two 2 weeks before my thesis submission, my thesis script got deleted because my laptop got formatted. So in any other scenario, that is, like, low marks or whatever, but because I was in the habit of writing fast, it was not a problem for me. I could rewrite my entire script in 5 days and then spend another week in polishing it. And I know for a fact that because I rewrote the script, it was better than the script that I wrote before because it inherently became the second draft. So yeah, I think I miss that rigor in general in life right now. Is because that you have that deadline and you're kind of just like chasing that deadline, not you're not afraid to make mistakes, and just going with the flow. Yeah, but yeah. So,
So you are associated with For Films, a production house that focuses on quality cinema. So what drew you to that company and what vision do you have for it?
uh, yeah, I think while I knew Aditya Vikram Sengupta, who started for films much before I went to Northwest. Um, I knew him because I think I was working in a TV commercial where he was also working in a TV commercial in the same TV commercial. He wasn't an established director then. He had just made Labor of Love and it had just gone to Venice. And that was the only festival that he had had. Nobody really knew him except a very small film loving community. Um, and I think I met him there, and I was just interested in the kind of films that he was doing, because when I was growing up in my college days, I wasn't very fond of uh, the quality of Bengali films that was happening there, or the quality of film that was made and produced in Calcutta. And not because of the storytelling, but I was not also because of the technical aspect of it, the cinematography, the lighting, the sound, and everything. When I was introduced to Labor of Love and the kind of craftsmanship that went behind it, I think I was fascinated with it because it was so different. And I kept in touch with Aditya in general. So whenever I was a college student, then I was making short films and I was sending it to him as just like without any expectation. Like I was just sending it to him like an older brother who just kind of gotten into this film circuit. What do you think? And he would give me very unbiased feedback. Sometimes he would be like, "Oh, this is great, good." Sometimes he would be like, "This is trash." And so it's that kind of that companion, mentor, mentee kind of thing grew from there, I think. And but he was also growing. He was also growing, and I went abroad and I was studying, and I was also growing in my own way. He made Jonaki in the meantime while I was there. When I graduated and I was kind of like contemplating should I stay in the US or come back, I think he was just starting to make Once Upon a Time in Calcutta. Um, mm, it was in its very like late development. All the funding was secured, and he was just kind of getting ready to shoot. And he asked me if I was interested in being a director's assistant um, on the shoot. And I realized very quickly that uh, I was still there in the US. I realized very quickly that I wouldn't be able to stay in the US. So it won't make sense for me to, stay 1 year or 2 years and then go back to India and do the same thing all over again. So I decided at that time to go back itself, and I started my journey in Once Upon a Time in Calcutta as an assistant director. Um, I started because it was a very small team. So we were also wearing many hats. So I started as an assistant director. And Once Upon a Time in Calcutta took a long time to finish because once the shoot was done, once the post production was done, COVID came. And once COVID came, the film was kind of like, post production was kind of stalled. So it took a much longer time. And in that time, I became a producer for the company because I was constantly working with Ford Films on other things. So it was natural for me to kind of shift from wearing an assistant director's hat in Once Upon a Time in Calcutta to becoming a producer on the film. And once I became a producer on the film and the company, I was also starting to kind of see the slate for Ford Films, like what is Ford Film going to do after this. And we worked on many stories, many kind of like feature ideas which we are constantly developing since then. uh, and we are in that process of applying for grants because our films are always going to be a co-production. Even when they are not co-production, it has to have certain collaborators on board to kind of allow us to make films our way. So we are mindful of that, and we want to tell stories which are socially conscious. We want to tell stories which are realistic, but realistic not in the realism sense of it, because we are always kind of dabbling in other genres. We're looking at fantasy, we're looking at horror and everything, but realistic in the sense of like it needs to have one ground in reality or the problems that we face in reality. And I think Aditya as a writer is very, he's character driven, he's visual driven. Like people know him as a, a visual driven director, but he's also very character driven. He loves spending time with his characters. And so we always look for projects when it comes to Aditya's films. We always look for projects that are very rooted in the milieu around us. You could go out of your house and meet somebody who could be a character in his film. So that was the kind of stories that we were developing for Aditya. I think once that happened and once I came into the picture, and we started talking about, is Fortunes only going to produce Aditya's work, or is it going to get a slate of new directors also in? And we started kind of looking at other filmmakers, other work that are being done, and we were open to the idea of kind of seeing what younger new debutant directors are doing. So when I was developing a different project of mine, I think that also Fortunes was doing. We developed a series, which I was doing with Fortunes. We are in kind of active development, late development for a filmmaker called Niladri's project, which is called The Cooperative. We went to HAF this year with it. So we are developing multiple directors' projects now, and they are all of very different voices. So you can't really say that Fortunes, makes a certain kind of film anymore. It may have started like that, but it's very diverse now. If you ever get a chance to watch my film, early days that I made, it's so different from anything that Aditya has made. If you read the script for Niladri's script that we are developing, it's so different from what I made or what Aditya has made. It's a satire. So now we are kind of looking at diversity. I think Fortunes has become now a statement of like the kind of projects that we are doing or what we are doing. We are conscious about that, but we are very diverse in terms of storytelling, in terms of our audience and everything. Yeah.
So let's talk about your feature debut, Early Days. So it's your directorial debut. The film deals with influential culture, and how life becomes performance online. So what inspired you to tell this story?
Um, what inspired me to tell this? There were many different inspirations. I think it was collective because I I was generally fascinated when I came to Bombay. I moved to Bombay in 2022. I moved to Bombay because I wanted to be in films. Um, I had a cousin who also worked in the film early days with me, um, who moved to Bombay, and it was my understanding that if he has moved to Bombay, it is to be a filmmaker. But really, he wanted to be a content creator. Very early on in 2023, early 2023, when he had just moved, I think I was facing difficulty in understanding why. Because for me, like I am pretty young, I think so, but even for me, I was finding it difficult to understand that this is a sustainable career path. Not like film is a sustainable career path, but I was you're judging somebody else's, like, kind of choice of wanting to be a content creator. So I think my first, wouldn't say inspiration, but curiosity came from like kind of trying to understand him. He is this guy who's like only 5 years younger to me, but he's not interested in French New Wave in the same way I am interested in French New Wave. And he's looking at, YouTube and Instagram. And I am very surprised and shocked and can't really articulate to him why he needs to look at French New Wave. Uh, I also kind of, and at one point, I think later I realized that, I was turning into the same kind of like, naysayers and like previous generation. And I was telling something to a guy who's like 5 years younger to me. Uh, and to a point that, yeah, because I think he didn't enjoy Bombay and he moved back to Calcutta. And that was unimaginable to me for whatever reason. Because for me, Bombay is where things get done, where films happen, where dreams happen. So I didn't understand him, and I was every day. I think I was kind of trying to uh, really figure him out uh, in a way. And I think I became like very. I was very strict to him when he was in Bombay because I had this older brother kind of like attitude towards him. But I think when he moved back, I tried to understand him more, and I was like, what is it that is like, kind of you're so interested in? That is the same time, I think, when I met the two actors of my film, Mansi and Sarthak. And Mansi, somebody I knew from Northwestern because she had also gone to Northwestern and she was in the journalism school. And here she was now moved back to Bombay and she's working in Bombay. And I had met, her and her boyfriend Sarthak, uh, who were both, wanting to be actors and they were auditioning and getting smaller roles, acting roles in Bombay, and they were also creating content for Instagram, and they were also doing this very nice, funny reels together. And I think I one day I just sat down with her and I was trying to understand what is it that you're doing. Why is visibility important? And I think I was just asking all of these like random questions um, to her. And I think the first thing that kind of struck me was what really happens when a couple kind of starts this content creation together and their ambitions for this collective thing becomes different. Like somebody wants to take it on a professional level and somebody wants to just keep it as a hobby. So what happens then? Like how far can you kind of go there? And I was like really trying to kind of explore that idea. And I was writing just notes. I have a small notebook where I constantly like write ideas, and I think I was kind of like penning that down over I think 2 3 months to basically just figure out like what happens. Like, does it cause a rift, or are people understanding? It could have caused rift in previous generation. Today's generation couples are more communicative. So do they communicate, or are they communicative? Like, what are they communicating? And I think I was just getting into that kind of like zone, and I think I just one day randomly asked her like, if I wanted to explore this in a film, would you be interested in acting in it? And of course, it's a very hyper fictionalized version of their lives. There is only 20% truth uh, about their lives in the film, but are you ready to kind of like put yourselves out there, like a little bit about your journey there, and like see where it goes? And I think she said she was interested, and I kind of wrote the script. I had the kind of like synopsis always ready before that, but and I had narrated the synopsis to them. And I think once they were on board with it, I wrote the script. And yeah, I think that pretty much. And I narrated the script, and they had kind of comments, and it went through I think 4 or 5 drafts in a span of 1.5 months of kind of constantly working together. They are actors in the film, but they are as much contributors as I was. So yeah, I think that was the kind of inception of how the film started and my inspiration.
So the film is a co-production between India and Singapore. So how did the international collaboration shape the film, and did you apply for any grants or labs as well?
No. So the story basically is the film started, how the film started and how the film ended was, it evolved a lot in that time. Um, I was actually working on a very different film, and I was pitching it across places in Bombay and going to lab for that, um, which I wanted to make as my debut film. But because I had never directed, I think people were very hesitant of, like, giving me an opportunity. And mm, it I was just getting tired of kind of like waiting around, because I knew that I had uh, some kind of like thing in me to be able to direct. I wasn't really able to articulate what that was, but I knew I could direct, because I've made short films with my friends. I never knew I could do it at a professional level. So I think I wanted that opportunity, and it was getting very difficult. Everyone was interested, but nobody was like really, taking the conversation forward. And development hell is a big thing in Bollywood. It takes forever for a film to get made for established filmmaker. I was lower than a newbie. I wasn't even a newbie. I was just not established. So it was also not fair for me to kind of think like, oh, people are just going to give me an opportunity. And I think at that time I was so kind of like tired of waiting, that, and I was writing early days, script on the side, and I was constantly working on it. So I knew I wanted to make that eventually also. I didn't know that I wanted to make that as my first film, perhaps. Um, so this other film, the one that I was pitching, was called Representatives. When it wasn't going forward and it was taking forever, I think I kind of decided in a span of 20 minutes, because I was waiting for an actor to kind of tell me uh, if they are interested in the project or not. And after waiting for 3 months, the actor said that they were interested in the project, but they don't want to play a certain kind of masculine figure, um, who is not the very masculine figure and could be maybe a supportive of a female protagonist. They're not ready for that. And I think that angered me, and that kind of like made me sad or whatever. And I think that 20 minutes I was just like extremely sad and angry for whatever reason. And I I think I was like, okay, I'm going to put this on hold right now. I'm going to work on early days, because that looks like a film that is going to be can be made at a much smaller scale. And worst case scenario, if nobody comes and supports me, I can make it alone. I will make it alone. And that was the kind of thing that I had in me. That was like the anger kind of like speaking. And I asked my flatmate, who was my school friend, with whom I started making short films with, in school. He's still my flatmate, and I asked him, if we do this, are you interested? And he was like, I'm interested. Let's do something. And I asked Mansi and Sarthak, like, if I make this into a feature, are you interested? And like, is this something you want to do? And they were interested, and they were like, when do you want to start shooting? And I was like, why not this weekend? Um, and let's start shooting this weekend, because uh, I didn't know if I could make this film, because on that day when this happened, it was my rebellion and anger speaking. um, this angst in me, which was like, I want to do this. I will not wait for any green light, and I will just kind of make it on my own and be completely independent and all this thing. So I think my pitch to everyone was like, let's shoot 2 days. Let's shoot whatever we can. and we will use that as a pitch and to get money, and then get more people on board and shoot few more days, and then we will use those few more days, pitch it to people, and shoot more days. So I think that was the kind of pitch that I presented to four people. So the first 2 days of shoot was just four of us, and no audio. I went to the rental equipment which was near my house, and I asked them what was the cheapest camera available, and they told me that they had a broken handycam which was available for 300 rupees a day. And I was like, great. And your limitation becomes your visual language. And I was kind of like thinking of what is my visual language going to be, and why is the handycam part of this narrative. And so yeah, I think the first 2 days of the film was the most liberating and the most freeing experience I've had, because it was essentially four people kind of roaming around in Bombay and shooting. And it was a lot of fun because we had those like the first 15 minutes of the film that we wanted to shoot. And I had designed it in such a way that I knew there was very little dialogue which could be needed, and I can shoot it just with I don't need a sound person, because I couldn't afford um, sound equipment. So I shot those 2 days, and I remember uh, Anupam, who is my flatmate, producer, editor, he cut like a 5 minute kind of a cut of the film, and I went to Chandigarh to Cinevesture, where I was pitching representatives. But I went to Cinevesture and I was constantly showing people those 5 minutes. I made those 5 minutes, and it was on my phone, and it piqued interest of people, and everyone was like, I'm interested to like see if I can come on board and if I can do this. And I think with that we got a little support, and then we shot again 2 more days after that, and we got a little more support like financially, and then we shot for 12 days more, and that was the biggest of our kind of thing. And then we had a crew, and we finally had, now because we already started shooting with a handycam, I wanted to stay true to that. And of course the handycam was there, but at least we had lights on set, I could feed people on set. uh, um, I had already started shooting in the flat where I was living, so that was my set. So I knew I could not do this, but I could afford to pay people, I could afford to pay locations, other locations where I was shooting. I was so that kind of became easy. So that is just the production of the film, and I think once the production of the film happened, I made an entire cut of the film done, and then you realize just how much money is needed in post production, um, and a lot of the thing that you generate, despite having, you get money and you are so mesmerized by the money that you kind of end up spending most of that in production and not really caring about post. Um, and I realized I had very little money in post production and I needed finishing funds. Um, and very honestly, when you're making film with friends and without a deadline in mind, and you're making it independently, there is a lot of push, and then you kind of lose steam, or you lose objectivity. And I think when I had made that third or fourth cut of the film, I really didn't know if couldn't judge my film, and oh, how is this happening? What is this great? I knew it was very different, and I was also very scared of the fact that it was so different from anything that I had seen in the Indian independent scape or Indian mainstream scape also. So I was very scared of how it will be received. I didn't know, and that is when I met Hazelnut Media at HAF earlier this year. Uh, and because we were talking about a different film, and I was constantly telling them that I made a feature film, and I'm stuck in post production because I didn't I don't have the funds to kind of like finish it, and I needed that final push. And I think they watched the film, and I think in a long time they were the person who really loved the film and believed in the film. And after months, we could hear from somebody that they connected to the film and they really um, thought that it's an important film. And I will, forever be grateful to them. Hazelnut Media is a Singaporean co-production, because I think they came on board and they were like, "What do you need?" And we are here for you to ensure that the film gets finished and it reaches the audience, and it's not just a passion project between friends. Um, so yeah, I'm super grateful to them, because I think if they hadn't come when they had come, the film would have taken a much longer time to finish, because and they really helped me kind of put put the belief and faith back into the film. Um, and yeah, I think that's the story of how it got made. Um, we we applied to Red Sea, and it was one of the first film festivals that we applied to, and we got to know that we got into Red Sea, which was great because Red Sea is a big film festival. It's a big platform, but it's a very young film festival. It's the fifth year, so it is also building its own set of it's building its own ecosystem. So I'm kind of thankful that I am also trying to build my brand, and I'm being partnered with a film festival and launching myself at a film festival, which is also growing. So yeah, I think I am happy how things have turned out to be.
Brilliant, brilliant. So as you said, like early days will have its world premiere at Red Sea Film Festival. So how nervous are you? How excited are you to show your film?
I'm I'm terrified, uh, because like I said, because again, if I see the final day of the shoot, there were many people on set. It was a full-fledged film. It was full-fledged, indie feature film where there are many people on set. We are all eating together, and there is costume, there is hair and makeup, and there is everything. But the first 2 days of, I always try to remember the first 2 days of shoot was not like that. The first 2 days of shoot was just like, let's see what will happen. And so it started with friends. So I get reminded of that. And for me, for everyone else who worked on the film, it is it is a feature film that they worked on. It's a professional engagement. For me, it was a weekend activity. It started as a weekend activity. So uh, I still can't take myself out of that mentality. So I'm very scared. But I think whenever people objectively watch the film, they think of it very differently. So, and I'm very terrified. It's a film where once you watch it, there are only two characters, and it's a love story between the two characters only. There is no third character in the film. No secondary third character, no tertiary third character. There are only two characters. So I think I was very scared of how the film will be received, um, because I was very scared that people will get bored when I was editing the film. I think once I finished editing the final draft, that fear was completely gone because I was enjoying watching the film. And I realized that if I am enjoying watching the film, then another person will enjoy watching the film because I was the most critical of the film. And if I was enjoying watching the film, then everyone will be enjoying the film. And like I said, a lot of my film education has been American films, and it is structured in its storytelling, and it's always going, and it is slightly plot heavy. Of course, it's very character driven. If it's two characters, it has to be character driven, but it is plot. It's like one plot of the after the other. So the story is flowing, and I think once the edit was locked, I was very happy with how it turned out. So all my fear of what other people will think kind of like went away when we were doing the final DCP check couple of days back, and I watched the film for the first time on a big screen, and I was very scared of how a video cam will look on a big screen. And it's a film which has multiple formats because it's video cam, but it also has a lot of vertical, uh, shots because they are at the end of the day influencers, and it has multiple media. It's constantly shifting aspect ratios. It's not a form. It's not a kind of like visual storytelling or visual language that I have seen before. So I was very scared of how it will be received. But when I watched it on the big screen, I think all that fear went away because I really enjoyed watching it on the big screen. It looked great on the big screen. So what people will think and what that thing kind of went away. At that moment, I knew people are going to have fun when they watch the film. It is a love story, so people will be invested in the characters, and people are going to just be engrossed in the film. So yeah, I'm excited for people to watch the film, but because I remember the first 2 days of how it started, also a little terrified.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, like in your first year, you were only 4 members. So, in your last year, how many members were there? 2 members.
Uh, on the final day of shoot, I think there were 12 members. Huh. But we had all departments. I don't think we had like that many assistants, but we had departments. All departments were there, and so we were all shooting. And I think post production, so it was full fledged only. Like we had like a feature film post production, how it happens properly. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, can you recommend your favorite films and filmmakers that have influenced you a lot? Few films.
No, I will ask everyone to watch Amelie, because I think I still watch Amelie now, and it's beautiful. I think it's a very wholesome film, and I do believe that the reason I will ask people to watch Amelie is because I think, especially now, there is a dearth of uh, wholesome films. Like films you watch with a smile on your face, and you kind of come out with a smile on your face. And so I think Amelie was that. And as a child, it really moved me. I didn't really understand a lot of the film when I watched it as a child, but it took me, uh, growing up and being in class 9, 10 when I watch it again to finally understand what the film was. Um, but it doesn't matter. So I think Amelie is one. I would always tell people to watch Dark Knight because that really kind of shaped who I was. I would also then ask people to watch a lot of the I think Battle of Algiers is something that I really moved me, um, because not just because of the story, but because of how it was made and the story of how it was made. So I think Battle of Algiers was like, something that I would ask everyone to watch. Um, the early films of Dogma 95, like if you're a filmmaker who wants to just start out and know how a group of friends or like group of like filmmakers kind of influenced a movement and made films with limitations without they all had limitations, but they made still were able to make films which are influential till date. So like all the earlier Dogma 95 films. So I would ask people to watch that. And I think one of my very recent favorites, like speaking of Dogma 95, is Another Round. Mads Mikkelsen's Another Round. I think that really influenced me again. And yeah, I think these among Indian films, um, one of my favorite Bengali films of all time is a film that nobody really talks about apart from Bengalis who grew up in my generation, is this film called Patal Ghar. I think the exact translation is the basement. I don't know what the exact translation is, but it's this film called Patal Ghar. Came out in early 2000s. Brilliant film. Nobody really talks about it. I think when people talk about films in the last 25 years made in Bengali cinema, there is a lot of Rituparna Ghosh, absolutely deserved. There is Srijit Mukherjee, and there is, of course, Aditya work. But watch all their films, but watch Patal Gaur because it was great. It was a musical. It was a science fiction. It was a children's film. It had Joy Gupta, who was a brilliant actor. So yeah, I think these films. See, I watched a lot of films with different taste growing up. So I think I was a film nerd who wasn't really in one camp. So for me, I watched Satyajit Ray at a very later stage in my life. I think when my parents realized that I was interested in films. I think they introduced me to Satyajit Ray, Mrinal Sen, Ritik Ghatak, and World Cinema. There was a channel called World Cinema, and we were watching World Cinema every night. Uh, so all that happened later. Earlier, I was watching with my mom a lot of mainstream Bengali films which had Uttam Kumar and Suchitra Sen, and those were great to me. I was watching Raj Kapoor, Mera Naam Joker on repeat. Uh, at the same time, I was also watching Buster Keaton. I was also watching kind of like English films, like I was watching Doctor No. I was watching Charlie Chaplin films, and so all of that. So I think I would recommend all films. But yeah, I think watch Amelie. If you have to watch one film, watch Amelie. That's the film I would take to an island. It's,
Brilliant, brilliant. So, beside filmmaking, you are the program manager of Writers Inc. program. So, what motivated you to take on this role, and how did you approach mentorship?
um, I Writers Inc. is in a state of transition now, because Writers Inc. Was funded by the Ford Foundation, and now we are kind of shifting gears a little bit, and Writers Inc. is expanding on what it does. I think it was started by Anshulika Dubey, who gets all the credit, because I think she really realized she's a producer. She was one of the producers of Once Upon a Time in Calcutta, and she very early on in her producing journey realized that there are a lot of screenwriters, there are a lot of filmmakers, there are a lot of storytellers, and India is a land of stories. Huh. And Indians have a lot of ideas, that they want to kind of communicate and share. However, screenwriting as an art form is not really taught in India with the same importance as cinematography or editing or the other kind of crafts of filmmaking, or sound. Uh, so she realized that there was a gap. Even if you look at FTII or SRFTI, the program is direction and screenwriting. It's direction and script writing. They're always clubbed together. So it is aimed towards writer directors. And when it's aimed towards writer directors, the inherent thing for most people is it is directors who want to get into the program. And because nobody is going to give them a script, they write their own script. So there was a dearth of people who wanted to, like, there was a lot of education for people who wanted to be screenwriters and screenwriters only. Whether they wanted to be directors later or eventually or at that time was incidental. Um, so when she realized it, she wanted to develop a program, and she was an Inc. fellow. She wanted to develop a program which was geared towards screenwriting. She was getting a lot of scripts, and she realized that they were great stories, great ideas at a synopsis level, but they were not good scripts. Huh. Um, so, so what she devised was a program where she could get American faculty, because American film school have a very structured way of workshopping. They are not teaching you ABCs. They're asking you to write the script, and then they're telling you, let learn the ABCs while I give you feedback. Huh. So that was the kind of, and I think the first year of Writers Inc. I was not involved because I was working on a different project. But I was so interested in what Anshalika was doing that I came on board from the second year. And yeah, I think it's a great platform because writers over there, you come with an idea, and for 6 months, you're only kind of working on that. So you're getting the American education of script writing in a very condensed way in 6 months online at your own pace while you're developing your project and doing everything else on the side to sustain a living here. Um, so I think it was a brilliant kind of like um, plan to get things. And I'm very happy and proud of all the students that were there. Um, my job as a program manager was to help facilitate everything. And because I think I come from a screenwriting academic background from the US, it was very easy for me to understand and bridge the gap between what the faculty wanted out of the students and what the students here could get from the faculty. Um, but it was primarily Anshalika and Gabriel who was the program director, the one who was designing the course. Gabriel Kelly, who was also a faculty of American Film Institute. What both of them did together was, brilliant, and they got a lot of people to come and give talks, which were all very important. But I think I'm very happy with the students that went to Writers Inc. because they're all doing great. Niladri was a Writers Inc. fellow, and we are developing and producing his feature film right now. It is a feature film that he developed at Writers Inc., which Aditya really liked. Um, Angad Baba, who won the second lab, is in late development, early pre-production for his feature film. There are many others who are in very late and active pre-production for their feature film. There are people who collaborated together, sold their show to Geo Hotstar. Um, None of this would have happened if they didn't know that there was a community that existed who wanted to write and write together. So I think the faculty and the education was a very important part of it, but I'm happy that it created a community. I am on both the groups and they talk every day, and to the fact that I have had to mute the groups. But I'm great that they're talking because they're always finding rooms to collaborate. They're helping each other out. One person is producing the other person's film, the other person is writing the other person's film. So I think now more than ever, when independent filmmakers are coming together and talking about making communities to for the word to get out and distribution to happen, communities are important, and I'm very happy that Writers Inc. could give that.
So Priyankar, my last question is like there are a lot of inspiring filmmakers. So what advice would you give to them if they want to make their film?
I am nobody to give advice. I just started making my own.
From
uh,
your journey, from your filmmaking journey, what advice would you give to them? And what did you learn in in this filmmaking process?
I mean, I am. I don't know. I'm very new to this, so like you can disregard anything that I'm saying. Um, but I will say that my experience with making early days, or even with making anything, even with Once Upon a Time in Calcutta, I would say, um, is if you are a filmmaker who wants to do their first feature film, um, and you do not have the privilege of connection or to wait or the privilege of money, um, I think the best way is to just start, to just begin. Do not worry about the perfect script. Do not worry about the perfect cast, crew. It doesn't matter who the, if you got the biggest actor to act in your debut film, if you got the best cinematographer to shoot your debut film, the best sound person to do the sound, all that does not matter. You have to kind of begin. And I think once you begin and the ball starts rolling, I think people will start noticing. And when they see that you are taking yourself seriously, I think people will start taking you seriously. Um, I think that has been my biggest learning. I think like I said, no, first 2 days of early days was kind of trying to tell myself that, oh, I can be a director, and I can make a feature film with my friends. It is possible. So first 2 days was just that, and once that happened, the crew became bigger by three more people, and once that happened, the crew became bigger by 12 more people. And once the shoot happened, the crew became bigger by 20 more people. So, the family will keep growing, but for that to happen, you need to begin. If you are always beginning to have the crew set before you start, you will take forever. Of course, it might happen, but it will take forever to make your film. Um, so yeah, I think just begin. It doesn't matter how it is. Uh, it will become good. I think one great thing about film as an art form is it's an art form of deception. Uh, it is basically very close to a magic trick. It's what you're showing and what you're not showing. Um, and I was actually very influenced by Aditya Vikram Sengupta. Very few people know it, but he's also a magician. Um, and a lot of like the fun, like evenings that we spend on him with him is basically him showing magic tricks to all of us. So I think it was a big inspiration for me to kind of also treat my film like that. So even if I'm shooting my film with four people on day one, and if I'm shooting my film with 20 people on day 12, huh, how how can I make sure that they look seamless, and they are not, that's not a big jump in production. And so a lot of that came from curiosity. A lot of came from like, dekh lenge kya hoga, and that kind of attitude. So I think my advice is, yeah, I think just don't be scared, just begin, and everything will fall in place. Your first film does not need to win the camera door. Like if you do win the camera door, sure, great. But if you do not have the privilege, if you come from a very middle class family and you dream of becoming a filmmaker, just do it. I think there was another filmmaker who I was very influenced by when I started making out. Is this guy called Dhruv Solanki. He was also a WritersINK fellow in the first lab, and I think I spoke to him because his attitude was like, I like making films, which is why I'm making films. I do not care about what happens after that. And I think that was so inspiring to me. So Yeah, just make films. I think have fun. I think a lot of people start making films because it's fun, and then they get so mixed with festival distribution, making millions with your first film that they forget to have fun. Um, so yeah, I think just have fun. Like begin.